Guys, what's going on? Is Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends with a rather ambitious video idea. I think there are 36 gear sets in the game right now. Incredible. I would have guessed maybe like 25. But yeah, there's a lot more than I just kind of, randomly hazarded a guess to. So we're going to talk about all of these gear sets, talk about some of the nuances of some of these gear sets, how you can use them, what type of champions should you be putting these gear sets on. Also kind of diving into beyond just the numbers on these sets. What are some other specifics that will help you out? For example, like, shield sets, they stack and they refresh every round of the battle. Stuff like that, kind of getting beyond just the obvious stats that you can already see on your screen. Before we jump into it, guys, two quick kind of things to mention before we get too far into the actual sets. Number one is, no matter what, if it's the worst set that we talk about today, like I think that Cursed is probably the worst gear set, or in the running for the worst gear set in the game, or the best gear set like Lifesteal, Speed, some of the best sets, some of the most coveted sets in the game. You should not be keeping or trashing an artifact just based on what set it's from. So if I pulled an amazing artifact from a Cursed set, I'd still hold on to it. You can still use it as part of a broken set. Doesn't mean that just because the artifact set sucks, you should be trashing it. And same thing goes with, okay, I pulled a piece of speed gear, which I consider to be the best set in the game. Doesn't mean that you should just be keeping it automatically, right? You should be judging it a little bit more harshly or leniently depending on the set that it's in, but it shouldn't be the be-all, end-all for any artifact piece. Now, the other thing that we make a big deal of in a lot of our videos here is base stats, right? So these artifacts scale off of the base stats of champions. So you might say, oh, hi, Katoon, she's a 104 speed. Who cares? Like, why do you make such a big deal about a speed at 104 versus a speed at, I think Apothecary is 106? Yeah, 106. So why does it matter? It's only 2 speed difference, but keep in mind, plus 12% speed. If you have 3 sets on, you're talking, 10, 20, 36% speed, and that's scaling off the base numbers. That goes with all of these scalable numbers, defense, attack, HP as well. So these base numbers are going to dictate how well these stats scale based on the artifacts that you have on these champions. It's really important to realize that, hey, play into your champion's strengths by placing gear sets on them that already have pretty high numbers in most scenarios. Sure, there's some scenarios where you need a champion to be at a certain speed, and that's kind of the exception to the rule here. And the same thing goes again with HP, attack, and defense. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way with, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the sets. So I'm going to move myself to the other side of the screen so we can kind of go through these dungeons and talk about all of the gear in each of these dungeons: Ice Golem, Dragon's Lair, and Fire Knight. You also can get gear from Arena and from Clan Boss inside this game, so we'll talk about those categories as well. So Ice Golem starting off here. Actually, let's start out with Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair is one of these interesting dungeons where it has the best two gear sets in terms of overall people who can benefit from these sets, overall champions that can benefit from the sets in the game, and that is Speed and Lifesteal. Now, Speed is amazing. We already talked about it. Speed sets, I mean, I'm not even going to spend a ton of time because there's 36 sets to get to, but I think that Speed is overall the holy grail of Raid Shadow Legends. I think it is the best set in the game, and it serves a wide utility. You can never be too fast in the arena. You're going to need speed gear to speed tune your Clan Boss teams, and the more speed, the better, generally speaking, for all these champions in pretty much every dungeon that you can think of in the game. So speed is amazing. Same thing with Lifesteal. It heals by 30% of the damage dealt. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you don't have a good healer, you don't have a good cleanser on your team, Lifesteal gear is going to go a long, long way in helping you out, especially in kind of the mid game, and then starting to tackle these difficult level 20 dungeons inside Raid Shadow Legends. So again, not spending a ton of time on these sets that you already know are really, really good. Accuracy, same thing. Accuracy is a step below, in my opinion, or a tier below, I guess, Speed and Lifesteal, but accuracy is one of, if not the most important stats in this game. Any champion that's going to be landing any debuff or any sort of turn meter reduction needs to have high accuracy. So accuracy, incredibly important. Don't need to tell you guys that. And it's a 2 set. 2 sets are inherently more valuable than 4 sets, unless the 4 set is just God mode, because, you can have 3 of them on one champion, or you can have 3 multiple gear sets, or you can just fill out a 4-piece gear set with another, 2 accuracy pieces if you want to continue to bolster up that champion's accuracy. So those are the 3 best sets in Dragon's Lair. And then the weird thing about Dragon's Lair, right, is that all of the other sets, there's quite a big drop-off, to be fair, okay? There's quite a big drop-off. Now, so that's what makes Dragon's Lair one of the interesting dungeons in terms of spending a lot of your time here, because you're really only going after, in the end game, pretty much just speed. And then, and I'm talking really end game, but before that, accuracy, lifesteal too. But then all the rest of the stuff, I'm not gonna say they suck. Stalwart in particular is really good, right? And even end game players are farming Stalwart gear. Minus 30% damage taken from AoE attacks. That's obviously good against any of the bosses in this game, particularly good against clan boss, right? Every single one of those AoE attacks, damage taken from enemy AoE is reduced by 30%. That's going to help you survive longer, thereby getting more damage off on the clan boss. Stalwart is definitely underrated in terms of its versatility in clan boss specifically. Now the rest of these sets though, I'm not a big fan of, okay? So let's talk about each of them. So Avenging, pretty basic. It's 30% chance to counterattack when hit with a critical hit. So it's just really one of the worst sets, in my opinion, in the game. First of all, the opponent has to crit, and then you only have a 30% chance on a 4 set. If it was a 2 set or a 3 set, there are no 3 sets in the game, but if they made them, a set like Avenging would be way more interesting if it was a 3 gear set. This feels like it should be a 3-piece set. Certainly not 4. I don't think it's worth it to have a 4-piece Avenging set on a champion personally. Daze is kind of the same boat. Now Daze can have some niche scenarios where it's useful, but keep in mind it's a 4 set, has a 25% chance to land a sleep debuff. But when a sleep debuff on an auto team, as soon as you damage that champion, the sleep debuff is stripped and negated, making the set useless. So for Daze, you really want to put it on a champion who has multiple AoE attacks on your team, and then pair that team with some support champions and some single target damage dealers. That way, only one AoE champion has the Daze set on him, and then those single target damage dealers are going to prioritize the champions who are not sleeping right now, and at the very least, only targeting one of them at a time. So Daze, in my opinion, is way better than, an Avenging set, for example. Hard to compare the two, but Daze does have some niche uses. Just make sure, if you're putting a Daze set on one of your champions, that you don't have a bunch of AoE attackers on the same team. It's really going to make the set totally worthless on that champion. Put it on your one AoE champion, then build the appropriate team around them. So Frost set is an interesting and unique set in the game. It's a 4-set piece, 20% chance to place freeze debuff on the attacker, okay? So unlike the other like stun set, for example, in Daze set, you're landing them on those AoE attacks or on your attacks. This one is different. When your champion in the Frost set is attacked, then they are going to have a chance at landing that Frost. So who are you putting in a Frost set? Really, it's going to be a tanky champion who has a provoke, okay? Champions who have a provoke, or champions who are going to be targeted by the enemy team, those are the champions you want to put a Frost set on. Perfectly though, in an ideal world scenario, it's a champion with provoke, because then they're going to be attacked with the A1 of the enemies, so they're always going to be attacked, and that's where you can find that nice synergy between the Frost set and a provoke type champion. Other than that, Frost is not one of my favorite sets. In order to get the full value, just like we talked about on the Daze, you really want that provoke champion to be utilizing that set, or at least a champion that is going to be tanking. Now Toxic is 50% chance to place a 2.5 poison debuff. In the beginning of the game, I was like, Toxic is pretty cool. I'm basically building poison onto my champions. But the downside is it is a 4-piece set. 4-piece to get a 50% chance to place the weak version of poison it's just not that helpful. It's really not. Even against, you know, clan boss, the weak version of poison, maybe in the early game is going to help you out, but as you scale, it's not a set that's going to give you continued value in the mid to the end game of Raid Shadow Legends. You really want to reserve those debuff spots on clan boss for 5% poison or the important attack down, decreased defense, the weaken, the popular debuffs that are used, HP burn against clan boss, and 5% poison. Same thing with the dragon. You know, it's not going to help you out against the dragon waves really. It's really going to help you out against the dragon, which would be the other big use case for poison, but it is the weaker version and it's a 4-piece set. I personally don't think that Toxic set is that worth it. I think it's one of my lower tier sets in the game. It's not worthless, but it's just not, it's better than nothing, right? But it's just not one of the best sets in my opinion. And then Destroy is the last set here in Dragon's Lair. Destroy is one of the worst sets in the game, in my opinion. It's definitely down there, okay? Decreases enemy max HP by 30% of the damage dealt. What they don't tell you here though, is you cannot reduce the maximum HP of a target in one turn by more than 8%. So let me kind of illustrate that again for you. Let's say you have a champion like a Turvold who hits 2 times on his A1 and his A3, right? Like one of the highest damage dealers in the game. Even though he might well exceed enough HP to bring that champion's max HP really far down, even though he's a multiple hitter, it's not one time per hit increasing 8%. It's one time per turn decreasing by 8%, excuse me. So again, what I'm trying to get at here is for Destroy, the upside is only 8% decrease max HP. It's okay against bosses who can heal themselves, but it's just not that great. Destroy, and furthermore on Destroy, you cannot exceed 40% of their max HP in terms of the total drop. So it's capped too. So not only is it 8 per turn, but it's not like you can just totally, you know, take away all their HP. You can't. Unfortunately, you cannot get one single target, one single enemy below 40% HP. So Destroy, in my opinion, again, for a 4-piece gear set, maybe a 3-piece, maybe a 3 set, it'd be worth it, but certainly not for 4, in my opinion. So next up is Ice Golem's Peak, where we have some more basic sets to start out with here, guys. We have Life, increase HP by 15%, offense, attack by 15%, and defense by 15%. Now, defense is the best of these 3 sets by a decent margin, because offense in Life, although they're just fine, they're perfectly fine sets, they actually have upgraded versions that you can get from Clan Boss. So let's talk about all 5 of the sets here in this little portion, right? So we have defense, which is 15%. You can't get an upgraded version of defense, so that defensive set is definitely one of the top tier sets in the game. It's a great way to build up extra defense on these defensive base damaging champions or support champions. Now offense, we should talk about alongside Cruel. So offense is 15% attack based on their base numbers again, and Cruel is plus 15% attack plus ignore 5% of enemy defense. Now, Cruel is one of the best sets in the game. I would say Cruel is S tier, like right below Speed and along with Lifesteal. And I would say that offense is maybe like A tier, right? So again, we're not talking too wide of a gap, but there's certainly a gap because you're getting extra value. The only upside to offense versus Cruel is that it does work with Lore of Steel Mastery, okay? But Cruel is still widely preferable because of that ignoring target's defense. In Life, we have here 15% HP, and then Immortal is the upgraded version of Life. Immortal has a heal by 3% every single turn, and Immortal gear stacks too. So you can, if you have 3 sets of Immortal, you'll be healing by 9% of your max HP at the beginning of every single turn, which is really nice to have on any champion in this game. So that's kind of 5 sets in one. Those are the Clan Boss, Cruel, and Immortal gear. That's the only way to access those gear inside the game. Now, crit rate here is again another S tier set. Crit rate is incredibly important when trying to build the crit rate of your champion to be higher, and having several crit rate sets on a champion can help you get to 100% crit rate without having to use crit rate gauntlets, which is, something that you should be aiming for if possible on your biggest go-to damage dealers. Put crit damage gauntlets, get that crit rate to 100% through other means such as crit rate gear. Resistance is really good in the arena specifically. It's kind of a more niche set, but if you want to build a resistance team, well, there's only one really good way of doing so, and that's putting 3 resistance sets on those champions or on a champion with a debuff cleanser, such as kind of Mausoleum Mage, for example. So building one champion with a cleanser with very high resist is a great way to go. Even though it's a more niche set, it's certainly not as widely used as any of the other basic sets that we've talked about. However, it's still pretty good, right? It's kind of niche B tier. Or A tier, depending if you need it. When you need it, it's really good. When you don't, which is more often than not, it's just all right. Retaliation is 25% chance to counterattack when hit. So it's better than Avenging. It's much better than Avenging. Now, one thing to note is your champions will use their A1 on the counterattack, and they'll only deal 75% of their normal damage on that A1 when counterattacked, okay, with a retaliation set. So what type of champion would benefit from retaliation? Well, obviously a champion who can stay alive would be number 1, right? And number 2 is champions who have a CC on their A1. So champions that have a stun or a provoke on their A1 is going to be great with a retaliation set. Even though retaliation is not one of the better sets in the game, think about it, right? Every single time they counterattack, they're going to have a chance to stun the attacker, and that's on top of their normal turn or whatever, or stun or provoke, and basically take them out of the game. So, retaliation, just a very mediocre set, but if you're going to use it, I would advise putting it on someone who has a CC ability on their A1. Reflex, 30% chance to reduce the random skill cooldown. So that is a random skill in every sense of the word. So if you have a champion with 2 skills on cooldown, one has a 5-turn cooldown and one has a 1-turn cooldown, it's not going to default to the highest cooldown, which would make the set way more, it would make it really strong, probably OP. But Reflex is a solid set on champions with only 2 skills, right? Or 2 skills and some passives. Because passives obviously don't apply. A1s don't apply because they're always on cooldown. So a champion like Bad Alcazar, for example, is great because he only has 2 active skills and one of them happens to be really good. A champion like, Valkyrie, I guess. Basically any champion with only 2 skills benefit the most from reflex sets. Now, Cursed, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the worst sets in the game. 50% chance on a 4 set of placing a 50% heal reduction. I mean, if you're gonna use it, better off using it on AoEs so that everybody has heal reduction on the team. But really, it's just, it's not a good set, Cursed. Taunting, it's a 4-piece set. 30% chance to place a provoke debuff. Again, provoke is a good crowd control ability in this game. Taunting is a pretty solid set, not going to lie. I wouldn't call it like S tier. I wouldn't rank it along the best sets in the game because it is a 4 set for a 30% chance. It's not really reliable and consistent enough to have the only AoE champion. You're going to be putting it on an AoE champion who can probably take a few hits, of course. But it's with a 30% chance, it's just not dependable enough to be the only CC on your team. That's the only knock on Taunting. Let's move into Fire Knights. So next up is Fire Knight's Castle, my personal favorite place to farm inside this game right now. We'll talk about why as we get to those sets. But let's start with Fury. So Fury, damage increases as HP decreases. What does that mean? Well, damage increases by 5% for every 10% damage taken based off their max HP. It only stacks up to 25% extra damage though, so you can't just get insane damage all the way. It does cap out. So because of the cap there, Fury is not a set that I really is sought after in this game. It's not worthless, and it can be kind of cool to play around with and to try out, similar to Frenzy, which we'll talk about in a little while. However, damage increases as HP decreases. You need to put it on a tank or someone who can withstand a few blows, obviously, because they need to be targeted and be losing damage, or just be targeted by AoE. It's kind of like a niche arena, maybe defense set where they're going to come in usually with a bunch of strong AoE attacking champions, and hey, you can get a little bit extra of a boost on your attack. But is it worth a 4 set investment? Personally, I don't really think so. Curing is another one of those sets that's a 4 set for 10% bonus heal. Not a fan of it. Doesn't apply to healing from artifacts and stuff like that, obviously. Only the healing that the actual champion is doing. And for 4 sets for a 10% bonus heal, again, not worth it in my opinion. I'm not, just like I said at the top of the video, I'm not trashing a good piece of curing gear, but I'm not putting a curing set even on my healers in this game. I'd rather put them in speed gear, and they'll be doing more healing anyway because they'll be much faster with plus 24% speed versus 4 set of curing. So then we have immunity. Immunity I love. So immunity I think is one of the best sets in the game, although it is very niche, right? So it's S tier, certainly. But again, it's only really seen and used in the arena and, talking gold 4 and platinum. So again, it's a niche set, but doesn't take away from the ability of immunity. So immunity for 2 turns means the first 2 turns of an arena battle, my team's not going to be able to get frozen by Tormund. Hegemon's ability is not going to work on him. I don't have to worry about really anything. I don't have to worry about any spells that are going to be cast on my champion. Same thing with turn meter. They are immune to turn meter manipulation, so I am good to go. That's why I love immunity gear so much, and that's one of the reasons I farm a lot of Fire Knight. Shield is so good. I've gone from thinking that Shield in the very beginning of this game was a decent set to now really one of the best sets in the entire game. I really mean that. It's a 4 set. I would put it, it's all dependent on your champions and your team, so I'm not going to start comparing it to other things, but I think it's S tier by far and away, right? So 30% HP ally shield for 3 turns. What does HP mean? It's based on the person who's wearing the shield set, their max HP. So put it on a champion with a lot of HP, and that's going to be 30% of his max HP shield on all champions, and it resets every single round of a dungeon. Man, shield set is really OP. Not only that, but it stacks. It stacks across, so I can use a shield buff, let's say Miscreated Monster, and it will stack with my shield set. It will show up as a separate shield buff. And it stacks with multiple shield sets. So what if I have 3 champions on my team, all who have a shield set? I'm gonna get 3 separate shield sets from all of those champions for 3 turns. That's incredibly valuable. Shield set is just, I can't say enough good things about shield sets. It's great. Crit damage is really solid. It's pretty straightforward. 2 set plus 20% crit damage. That's very valuable, man. 20% crit damage is insane in terms of overall damage output. It works really well on champions that have damage based on enemy max HP because crit damage is dramatically effective, obviously, really scaling up from 1 million to 1.2 million damage and so on and so forth. Has a lot of extra usage on those champions. Frenzy is 10% turn meter for every 5% HP lost. So Frenzy is another kind of interesting set. I like Frenzy a little bit more personally than Fury. Now, unlike other sets that we've talked about here, 10% turn meter for every HP lost is not per turn. It's not like it's capped like other sets that we've talked about so far. If a champion hits me for, 20% of my HP lost, I'm gonna get a 40% turn meter boost out of that. That's really solid, right? So it does stack even on the same turn. What type of champions are best for a Frenzy set? It'd be, ideally a champion who has some support to your team, who's gonna be buffing your allies or healing your allies. Because think about it, right? A big AoE attack comes in, everybody's really low health, your healer or your support champion has a turn meter almost all the way filled again by that strong AoE nuke, and then they can heal the rest of the team up. So that would be the best use case, in my opinion, for a Frenzy set. Regeneration heals by 10% each turn. It's an average set at best, in my opinion. Again, the Immortal set has kind of a built-in regeneration on a 2 set. It's 3% each turn instead of 10%, but it does stack as well. And generally speaking, I'd much rather have immunity, or not, did I say immunity? Immortal. I'd much rather have Immortal with the HP and the 3% heal than I would have to invest in a 4 set on regeneration. Just my opinion. Stun is the best CC set in the game. 18% chance of placing a stun debuff. Put this on a champion who has multi-hitter AoE attacks, and it's going to serve as sometimes your primary enemy CC crowd control on your team. Stun is one of the S tier best sets in the game. Savage is the same thing. ignores 25% of enemy defense. This does stack with Helm Smasher Mastery. It stacks with abilities that ignore defense as well. So if you have an ability that ignores 75% of target's defense, well, guess what? You're ignoring all of their defense if they're in a Savage gear set. Savage set is great on heavy damage dealers or damage dealers, whether they be AoE or single target, that already have an ability that ignores another percentage of the opponent's defense. All right, guys, so we talked about a bunch of sets there. Let's go ahead and end it off with the arena set. So we're not going to talk too much about a swift parry and deflection, because although they are amazing, just S-tier sets, ironically, people who actually get them don't even use them in the arena. Most of them don't. And beyond that, and I'm sure maybe a dozen people watching this video right now, maybe 20 of you guys actually have any of these gear anyway, but they're great gear. The gear they just added to Platinum Arena, some of the best gear in the game. They are 4 sets. But we talked about Cruel and Immortal already, the upgraded versions of offense and life gear, right? And they're both really good. 2 S tier, 2 of the best gear sets in the game. Divine Offense, crit rate, life, and speed are kind of like the upgraded versions, kinda, sorta, of some of the basic sets as well. But I think that between the fact that they don't work with Lore of Steel because they're not basic sets, and the fact that, you know, the extras that you get are just, they're not as good as Cruel and Immortal, you know? So they're not, in my opinion, they're not like S-tier sets. They're good, they're just not, you know, great in my opinion. So 15% HP shield for 3 turns on offense. Again, that does stack with shield sets. Crit rate, same thing, HP shield plus the 12% crit rate. And then we have the Divine Speed, again, or Divine Life, 15% HP with 15% self-shield and Divine Speed. Same thing, just like Speed gear is the best out of all these sets in my opinion, so is Divine Speed with 12% speed plus the HP self-shield for 3 turns. Again, you get all this gear from the arena. There's not much to say about this gear other than if you want that self-shield, go ahead and use it. Just keep in mind, again, you can't use your Lore of Steel Mastery for this gear, which is definitely a drawback. So guys, I think that's it, man. We went through every single set in this game, and I don't think it took as long as I was expecting. Let me know if you found this video useful in any way, or if you'd rather not make videos, let me make videos like this in the future. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. I can take it. Any constructive criticism is always great here on the channel. If you enjoy the content, I invite you to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end, guys. I appreciate it. Oh! Whoa, almost forgot. I don't know why it came to me at the very last second. Almost forgot Relentless. Relentless is one of the best sets in the game. You have an 18% chance to get an extra turn. So obviously it can benefit pretty much any champion of the game, and I think that some people even underrate Relentless gear, how valuable getting an extra turn is in this game. Not only are you getting an extra turn to do, you know, more stuff, help out your team even more, but you're also refreshing, you know, by getting an extra turn, you're refreshing the cooldowns -1 of all of your skills as well. So Relentless is definitely just an incredibly, can't say enough good things about Relentless gear. The downside is only available in tournaments right now, and you have to finish, you know, 1 or 2 usually in your local group in order to get your hands on some Relentless gear. Now I can thank you guys for watching all the way until the end. Thanks, and as always, take care, guys.